Recording started.
All right. Good morning and welcome everybody to our CCC OER webinar series. This is the first of our webinars for winter-spring of 2015. And we're continuing our trend on webinars on OER research. As some of you may recall, we had a webinar in December on OER research featuring Beck Pitt from the OER Research Hub, and she was talking about faculty and librarians and their perceptions around OER. And also Nicole Allen from Spark was talking with us about librarians' use of OER and open access materials. This morning we have two wonderful speakers, and we're going to take an even deeper dive into research. We have Boyoung Che from the Washington State Board of Community and Technical Colleges, who is the e-learning and open education policy associate there. And we also have John Hilton, who is an assistant professor at Brigham Young University and a longtime OER researcher with the Open Education Group.
Thanks for having us here.
Great. I'm so glad you could come, John and Boy. For those of you who might be new to the Collaborate system, you'll see over on the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see a list of participants. You should see your name in there. And then underneath that, you'll see a chat window. And please feel free to use that chat window as we go through the webinar. When we're going to have more active times and during the presentations, we'll open it up to using video and voice as well. But we will be monitoring that window and answering questions as we can, and we'll leave time at the end to get more thoughtful questions answered for you. All right, now I'm going to ask you to help us out and tell us where you're from. You can pick up one of the tools, the little star tool, which is in the vertical toolbar, kind of usually the center of your screen. And you can tell us where you're located by picking up one of those. Okay, thank you. A few of you have already gone and shown us. We've got a lot of folks in North America, and I know for a fact that we have at least one educator from Canada, from British Columbia. So it looks like we're North American centric today. Sometimes we, oh my heavens, looks like we might have somebody in Africa. How exciting. And we do sometimes get folks from overseas, and we really welcome that, although the time differences make it a little difficult. Right. So today I'm going to do a few introductions before we get to the meat of our presentation here, and I want to talk to you also about a couple of activities that are coming up through the Open Education Consortium that we'd love to have you participate in. So first, I just want to introduce our really wonderful speakers today who have such great experience in doing research on OER usage. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to Boyoung. As I mentioned earlier, she is the e-learning and open education policy associate at the Washington State Board of Community. And Boyoung, you just want to say a few things about your day job there in Washington.
Of course. Hi, thank you for this opportunity again. My name is Boyoung, as Una introduced already. And so over here at the Washington State Board for Community and Technical Colleges, I conduct research on open education. I analyze and help create building policies around open educational resources use, and I also manage all professional development efforts in open educational resources. So anything coming from Washington CTC system that has open in it, I'm somehow involved. So such as this brand new website that we have released last year called Open Washington, or this Open Attribution Builder. So they are some of the major services, the services that we provide. So it's really great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Boyoung. Boyoung, the audio is a little difficult this morning, and I may ask you to dial in. I hate to ask that, but the audio is not great. So if you had that email message that I sent to you earlier,
Okay.
I might ask you to dial in.
Okay.
I think the recording will be better. Okay, thank you. It'll be about 10 minutes before 5 minutes till we get to your presentation. All right, John Hilton. Now I'd like to introduce John Hilton, who is Assistant Professor at Brown University and longtime OER researcher. John?
Thanks so much for letting me participate. I've been involved in researching open educational resources for the past 7 years, and it's been a great adventure. I think that there is so much that open educational resources have to offer, and I think one of the major barriers to increasing its adoption is having more research, especially around perceptions and efficacy. So I think a lot of academics who might be considering utilizing OER really wonder what research has been done to show what students think about OER or what faculty members think about OER. What's going to happen to the student learning in my classroom if all of a sudden we adopt a new free textbook, which you might think you get what you pay for, so probably if I adopt these free learning resources, the quality of student learning will decrease. So exploring these questions and finding out what's actually happening has been a really exciting adventure for me.
Great. Thanks John. And yes, if you'd like to introduce yourself in the chat window, that would be great as well, so that other folks can see what colleges and universities you're from. So now I wanted to tell you a little bit about the Community College Consortium for OER for those of you who may not have been with us before for these webinars. We are an associate consortium of the Open Education Consortium. So that is our parent organization, which is a huge global open education organization. Our mission at CCC OER is expanding access to high quality materials, primarily open educational resources, and we support faculty choice and development of those resources. And our overall goal is to improve student success. We have members at 250 plus colleges in 19 states and provinces, and many of you, of course, are from other areas, and we would welcome you as members as well. I wanted to mention to you a couple of wonderful activities that are coming up in the next couple of months around open education, and we'd love to invite you to participate. The first one is the Open Education Week. So Open Education Week is a celebration of the global movement around open education, and it's an opportunity to raise awareness about open education and its impact on teaching and learning worldwide. And by open education we mean resources, tools, and practices that employ a framework of open sharing to improve educational access and effectiveness. There are many ways to participate in this. You can simply enjoy the website and the webinars that are going to be offered that week, but you can also contribute, and we really urge you to do this if you're involved in OER. You can upload a video and share that link with us. You can host an event in your community or an online event and post that at the Open Education Week using the Submit button there so that we can post it on our calendar and other folks can join you. So really looking forward to a lot of global participation in Open Education Week this year, and it's the 4th annual one. And next, I wanted to mention to you our global conference. Every year, the global conference is focused on a different theme. This year is entrepreneurship and innovation in open education, and also every year it takes place in a different location. So last year it was in Slovenia in Europe, and this year it's going to be up in Alberta, Canada, in the lovely Banff region. And there's many people coming from 6 continents around the world to present on their open education projects. And we'd love to have you join us. Right, now to our presentation. John and Boyoung have introduced themselves and told you a little bit about what they're going to talk about. And we know, those of us who are practicing in OER and those of you who are at colleges working on this, you know that the impact on teaching practice is a really important thing to understand. And we're going to hear a lot about that today, and efficacy for student learning. So does OER support student learning? How does it impact it? And these studies are so important for growing adoption of OER. Any of you who've tried to make the case to your dean, to your vice presidents at your colleges about starting up OER projects, they often ask you for data, and this OER research studies are so important as part of that. And also, Boyoung and John are both going to address why and how you might conduct OER research on your campuses so that you can get data as well that will fuel the growing movement. All right, at this point I'm going to turn it over to Boyoung to tell us about the work that she has been doing at Washington State for the last 4 or 5 years to grow a huge OER movement. John?
Yes, I just want to test this calling situation first. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Okay, is that, one second. Is this clearer now?
It's fairly clear, yeah.
Okay,
Boyoung,
okay.
are you on the phone or the microphone?
I'm on the phone.
Okay. If up at the top where it says audio and video, if you click on the little phone icon, it turns off your speakers on your computer.
Okay. 1 second. Let me do that. Colleges have joined this our Community College Consortium for Open Educational Resources, which is fantastic. And then there were several community college-focused OER projects nationwide. But despite that progress, though, we realized that little has been published about how community and technical college faculty actually use and perceive OER and the types of support they need to implement and sustain OER use. We couldn't find any studies out there that provide that specific guidelines in how to design a support system for community college faculty. So to respond to that need, this qualitative study investigates the community and technical college faculty's use of OER usage and their support needs. So first, we examined the spectrum of faculty's use of OER and their motivation for implementing them in their instructional practice. And second, the study categorized the benefits and challenges that faculty experienced using OER. So in the end, finally, we will synthesize the faculty responses pertaining to the types of institutional support needed for successful OER implementation. So I realize that I have probably talked about slide number 2 already. So we employed a qualitative interview study design. We conducted 30-minute phone interviews with 60 faculty members. Participants in this study were all the faculty members in Washington Community and Technical College system who have integrated OER into their teaching practice. So these were very selected group of participants. And the design of this study was based on our previous statewide survey with 770 faculty members. So this study itself had a long history of designing and implementing. Okay, so the finding. So the first a finding of this study is about the spectrum of OER use. A majority of the participating faculty, they described their use of OER in the context of textbook use. So that was really interesting. And some faculty saw OER as an alternative to the traditional commercial textbook, and then others considered OER as an additional resource to supplement commercial textbook. So as you can see on the slide, faculty's use of OER fall into two major categories. Using OER as a supplemental course material or using OER as a primary course material. So the first about supplementary use, many faculty, they stated that, they started implementing OER as a supplementary resource, and they gradually increased the extent of their use of OER. They used commercial textbooks as primary materials for the delivery of their course, and use a variety of OER to support their teaching. So for this supplementary use, two major patterns were found. First, supplementing the course with OER unintentionally. Some faculty were found to have used OER without clear intention to leverage the specific qualities of OER, available resources, specific qualities of OER. And second, supplementing the course with OER intentionally. So faculty in this category, they still used commercial textbooks as primary source of their curriculum and used OER as supplementary materials. But their use of OER is much more intentional than the faculty in previous category. And they were more mindful about copyright issues, and they would check if the materials are openly available before implementing them in their class. So they might not necessarily know the technical elements of OER, but they made specific efforts to use open materials. Next, primary use. A great number of faculty, they replaced commercial textbooks with openly available textbooks or course materials they have adapted or composed. So they were able to identify, so we were able to identify two major patterns of this primary use. One, using open textbooks. The faculty in this category, they replaced commercial textbooks with openly available ones, and the textbook is still the primary resource for their courses, but the openness of the textbook provides students with free or cost-effective access. So this approach seems to be preferred by many faculty because it kind of provides pre-structured, turnkey solution for easy implementation. So second, using open course materials, not the textbooks. So faculty in this category, they stated that they were intentionally moving away from the format of the textbook. They prefer to provide students with a course materials packet that would allow constant and immediate modifications. So these faculty reasoned that OER gave them an opportunity to question the necessity of using textbooks and believe that they could design the course in a more responsive way if the content were not confined to the format of a textbook. So they were kind of the most radical kind of users. So I see a lot of questions on the chat. Yes.
We had one person ask what was the percentage in the study that used open textbook replacement for commercial textbooks. So that third bullet.
Oh, that's a good question, but the thing is this was a qualitative study, so we didn't exactly count the number of faculty who said this way and that way. So I can't only give you the percentage of the faculty who said that, but it was a good number of faculty. I would say about 1/3. I can't really say that it was strictly 30%.
All right,
okay.
Thank you.
Okay, alrighty. I'll move on. So it appears that implementing OER in their teaching practice was largely influenced by their educational philosophy. So we found these two major motivations for faculty to use OER in their teaching practices, and they were one, their strong belief in open education. Their strong belief in educational opportunity to provide a low-cost access to academic content, and second, their pursuit of pedagogical freedom. First, I wanted to talk about their belief in more accessible education. So many faculty, they expressed a very strong desire to make education more accessible in community and technical colleges especially, and they were seriously concerned about the rising cost of textbook, and then they turned to OER to reduce the financial burden of their students. And several faculty, they witnessed the financial struggles, the struggles of their students, and then let me just read one of the interview transcriptions. It's really strong. My decision to redesign my course using OER was what I would call an educational emergency. I was teaching a summer communication class and discovered that only 3 students in my course had a textbook. In Tacoma, 70% of the people in the area are living in extreme poverty. I had to find an alternative for my students to carry this course. So that's the end of the transcription. So for these faculty members, implementing alternatives to commercial textbooks has been their long-term practice. Before they were introduced to the concept of OER, they didn't necessarily understand the technical elements of OER or its definition, like licensing or public domain. But they gathered the available resources from the web, then they repackaged them and provided them for their students. Next, one second. Next, I wanted to talk about faculty's pursuit of pedagogical freedom. So OER appeared to some of the faculty because of its fluid and flexible nature. This viewpoint was expressed most strongly by the faculty who abandoned the textbook format entirely. Remember that earlier I talked about the spectrum of use, and one group of faculty, they abandoned the textbook format entirely. So so these faculty, they showed a strong preference for materials that allow them to take full control of course development and move away from what they see as the disadvantage of the traditional textbook. So let me read one of the interview transcriptions about this issue. It's really powerful. It's absolutely important to understand that if you're a teacher and you're using open educational resources, you as a teacher get to see immediately if those resources are helpful or not to your students. And if they are not helpful to your students, you have the power to edit them, to change them, and that is absolutely head and shoulders above any other reasons why I do these open educational resources. I can tell right away whether or not what I'm putting out for my students is helpful and works. So that's the end of the transcription. So when I asked what are OER to you, several faculty use the terms such as freedom and liberation to describe their experience of the benefits of using OER. So I think whether it was their belief in more accessible education or their pursuit of pedagogical freedom, I think many faculty chose to use OER because they understand it to be more open, fluid, and evolving in nature characteristics, and then they see as consonant with their philosophical preferences about their teaching practice. So next, I wanted to talk about the benefits that our faculty experienced. So our faculty, Washington CPC system faculty, experienced a variety of perceived benefits in implementing OER in their courses. And the benefits they identified can be or are broken down into 6 categories. So let me go over one by one. First, saving students money, of course. This is the most frequently cited benefit that faculty identified with using OER, and it was saving students money relative to the cost of commercial textbooks. So many faculty reported that their students expressed gratitude and satisfaction about cost saving. And next, enhanced instructional responsiveness. So several faculty they emphasize that being able to update the content as needed is one of the most critical benefits they have experienced in their use of OER, and they emphasize that the ability to modify, update, and revise OER brings 2 significant benefits in the classroom. One, the presence of more current and evolving course content, and 2, active students' involvement in the creation of content. So let me talk about the evolving course content first. Many faculty said that since they have different types of students each quarter, and what they worked in the previous year might not work in the current one, so they said that OER helps faculty adapt quickly to these differences in adjusting course content to adapt to the needs of any group of students. And about active student involvement, this was really impressive. I wish I could read all of the inner transcriptions to you, but since I have only a few minutes left now. So many faculty emphasize that the responsive nature of OER led their students to be more actively engaged with the specific content of the curriculum. These faculty, they often invited students to be editors of the course materials, and they updated the course content based on the feedback they received from the students. So it excites students, and then they wanted to be they felt really proud to be an active member of actually teaching the course. Next. More diverse course content. The faculty, they identified the potential for creating diverse course content in OER as a critical benefit. They emphasize that OER helped them implement various types of learning materials from some educational sources that they otherwise would not have been aware of. Next, increased reflection on teaching practice. Many faculty mentioned how OER helped them reflect on their current practices and encourage them to experiment with different teaching styles. They mentioned that to make OER work, they needed to change their practice in fundamental ways, and often adapting that the practice to style more compatible with what is necessary and possible with OER. By the way, the flipped classroom model was mentioned most frequently as a teaching method faculty implemented with OER. Faculty believe that flipped classroom styles of teaching and learning are really compatible with the use of OER than a traditional way of teaching. So I thought that was really interesting. Next, the convenience of use. Many faculty expressed their relief that with the adoption of OER, they no longer experience the challenges caused by adopting commercial textbooks. So it appears that some faculty have experienced a range of issues with their commercial textbooks, such as textbooks not arriving in time for the start of the course, or students coming to the class without the textbook because they couldn't afford it, or students having older editions of the textbook because they couldn't afford it, or difficulty caused by complications of bookstores' ordering system, that the bookstore may not allow you to order books unless you order for or 3/4 worth or that kind of thing. So that's the end of the benefits that we identified. Next, I want to move on to challenges of using OER. Lack of time. Well, how much time do I have, by the way?
I think you need to finish up in the next 4 or 5 minutes.
Oh my goodness, I've only covered about half of it so far. So lack of time, let's see how much I can go. So lack of time to find and modify materials was the most frequently mentioned challenge in implementing OER among faculty. This was consistent theme with faculty at all levels of experience and in all styles of use of OER. So those faculty who are at the beginning stage, they wanted to have extra time to review the available OER, and faculty who have implemented OER as a supplement, they wish to have a block of time to convert their courses to OER-based course, and faculty who are actively using OER as a primary resource of their courses, they wanted to have extra time to repackage their courses so that they can share them with the world. So many faculty use sabbatical years or release time to restructure their course using OER. But the adjunct faculty who comprised 65% of all faculty in the Washington CCC system, they don't typically receive release time or sabbatical to work on OER implementation. So that's a really big problem. Next, I wanted to talk about the uninviting climate. So several faculty expressed concern that their OER implementation would not be welcomed in their department or college. This was an important concern, especially for adjunct faculty who were not participants in their department's textbook selection process. So the department or college did not necessarily prevent faculty from implementing OER, but the implementation of a standard textbook selected by department textbook committee, leaves really less room, almost no choice for alternatives. So lack of technology skills. Many faculty reported that some of their students struggled with technology issues while using OER. That's because many community and technical college students are struggling financially already, and they are often ill-equipped with the necessary technologies to read materials online. And one group of students found, and then we have a lot of returning adults who received their previous education in a traditional classroom without commercial standard textbooks. So they are one of the groups who experience this difficulty with lack of technology and skills. And this is something that was really interesting that I haven't read from any other report. So several faculty expressed the concern that while OER provides a pedagogical freedom for faculty by giving them more control over course development, they said it can also increase feelings of uncertainty about the quality and completeness of the course. They explained that they were initially surprised or sometimes scared about implementing OER because they didn't have obvious structure as in commercial standard textbooks. So some faculty they emphasize that their students also experienced anxiety with the increased flexibility and fluidity of OER-based classes. They mentioned that this was mentioned by faculty who had completely disassociated with their classes from the commercial textbook format. I was going to read one of the interview transcriptions, but I will pass. And they're all in the report. Next, I wanted to talk about several faculty, the difficulty in wading through the information. Several faculty stated that they experienced some initial difficulties wading through the available OER to find what they needed. They were generally able to locate websites that list OER repositories, but those websites often provided insufficient guidance and information about the resources listed. And specifically, they wanted to have more categorized search function with guidance and richer descriptions of the materials to shorten the time necessary to identify suitable materials for them. And the differences in course specifications. Faculty talked about the difficulty. Una?
Yes.
Oh, were you talking to me?
No, but you're going to have to finish up in the next minute or two, Boyoung, so we can give it on.
Okay. All right. If I have just a minute or two, I'll just explain what I have so about this paper. So far, I talked about the spectrum of OER use, benefits that our faculty experienced, and some of the challenges our faculty experienced. Then after this, I was going to present about the support needed that our Washington CTC system faculty identified to make their OER use to make their OER implementation easier. And there are 8 elements categorized into 4 categories. So I strongly recommend that you actually read through the paper. It is 38 pages long, but it is full of really authentic testimonials from our interview transcriptions that I think that you will really enjoy reading them in what they really think about the issues in OER implementation. And if you have any questions about this report, please feel free to contact me, and I will make the same presentation at the Open Ed Global Conferences soon. So maybe you'll have another chance to hear from me. So thank you again for this opportunity. I will just end it here.
Thank you so much, Boyoung. And yeah, I'm sorry that we didn't have a longer time for you to present on this, but the report is wonderful. I know many of you have already read that. And here is the link to it, and it was also posted just a moment ago. And thank you, Monique, for putting Boyoung's contact information in there. Boyoung and Mark Jenkins were the authors on that report. And now I want to move along so we have time for John Hilden. And at the end of John's presentation, we'll have time for questions overall. So John, take it away.
Hi, I'm really happy. Boyoung, thanks for that great report. I would love, as I'm talking, to field any questions that are coming about anything I'm saying. And I'll do the best I can to be monitoring that chat area. Una, please feel free to interject if you're seeing things I'm not. One of the things I just noticed, Deborah made a comment about switching to OER and having her older students saying that they prefer to read from a book as opposed to reading online. One of the interesting things in many of the studies that I'll be talking about is that with many OER, print versions are available just at substantially cheaper costs than traditional textbooks. So I think that's one sort of interesting thing. It looks like Deborah is doing some free printing as well in terms of printing out OER. So my main hope today is to talk about research that's been done on perceptions of OER and its efficacy. And my main goal is to spur in your minds and hearts ideas of how you could do similar research in your own context. All the slides are going to be posted, and there's a website that I can point to right here, right at the bottom of the screen, the openedgroup.org. If you go to the openedgroup.org, there's a link to a page called the review, and basically the review even has thanks for that. It has more information than I'll be even able to present here in this limited time period. So I'm going to be skipping through a variety of slides. My goal is not to get through all the slides, but rather, to hit some of the highlights. Here's one of the interesting data points to me is that a survey done just a couple of months ago found that college professors rate proven efficacy and trusted quality as the #1 and #2 most important criteria for selecting teaching resources. So part of our strategy at the Open Education Group is that we need to increase the number of academic peer-reviewed studies around proven efficacy and trusted quality or perceptions of OER materials so that people will be more likely in the future to adopt these resources. Approximately 2/3 of faculty members surveyed in this recent study aren't even aware of OER. So there's still a lot more to be done in terms of increasing awareness. But even when people know about OER, do they trust it? And I think the more academic peer-reviewed studies we have in this venue, the more likely we'll be to do that. So here were the inclusion criteria. I'm going to present a little more than a dozen different studies. So we focused on articles that had a clear focus on efficacy or perceptions in actual practice, not theories about OER or how it might look. All the resources examined in these studies were ones where OER was the primary learning resource. So there was a complete substitution of OER from traditional learning resources. And then also, in order to be included into this study, they had to be published by a peer-reviewed journal or in an institutional research report. So blog posts or their own conference proceedings were excluded. I think there's a great question that just came up about how many research studies have been done on the efficacy of publishers' textbooks. The short answer is very few. In terms of, you don't see, I have not found any studies where one publisher's textbook was compared with another one. So I think that's a really interesting point. In some ways, it's sort of unfair that the burden of proof is on those who are wanting to do OER because it's something different, whereas there's not a lot of empirical research showing that, what traditionally been done was effective. I'm going to jump ahead to this study here. And again, the reason why I'm going to be talking to these studies is I hope that maybe you can be thinking about, in your context, how you might be able to do some research, hopefully publishable research, with what's happening in your classroom. So this Bowen study compared the use of a traditional statistics textbook with Carnegie Mellon's online learning initiative. And so they partnered with 6 different institutions, and participating students were randomly assigned to either participate in a face-to-face class using a traditional textbook or a hybrid class that primarily used the OER research and then also met face-to-face with a professor once a week to answer any questions that the students had. Both groups took the same standardized test at the beginning and the end of the semester, as well as a final examination. And you can see there were 605 students taking the OER version of the course, and about 2,500 taking the traditional version. At the end, students who utilized OER performed slightly better on standardized exams than those who did not, but the differences were marginal and not statistically significant. So this is a finding that we're going to see replicated over and over again, that it turns out that in these studies it's pretty much equal results. One of the things that was really great about this study was, at the beginning they asked for volunteers of who wanted to take this class online, and from the pool of volunteers, that was the randomly selected group into the OER section and into the traditional textbook section. So they had some randomization that you can't often get in studies. This next one I participated in, I think is a little simpler in design. It's not as rigorous, but it might be something that you feel like you could actually replicate pretty easily in your own work. So this was done with some introductory psychology classes at the Houston Community College. And they had concerns at their college about students being able to afford textbooks. So what they did was they made a switch in the fall of 2011 to introduce an open textbook that was freely available online. And what they did was they compared student grades, student test scores, in fall of 2011 with those from the fall of 2010. So they're able to get some kind of insight, specifically when they looked at the test results around the same professor. So they would look at Professor A 2011 versus 2010, Professor B 2011 versus 2010, and found that there was a correlation between the introduction of the open textbooks with an increase in grade point averages. I'm going to jump ahead here to a study by Bliss and other colleagues. This was a really interesting study, and I think this would be an easy one to be replicated at other institutions and in other contexts. He studied OER adoption at 8 different institutions of higher education. I see people are here from some of those institutions actually where his research was done. 58 teachers and 490 students across 8 different colleges completed surveys regarding their experiences in utilizing open educational resources. Approximately half of the students said that the OER materials had the same quality as traditional textbooks, and nearly 40% said they were better. Students focused on several benefits of the open textbooks, including technical advantages of having digital text like searchability, and the free cost was critical to many of the students in the study. 55% of teachers reported that the course materials, the open course materials, were of the same quality as those that had been previously used, and 35% felt that they were better. So this Bliss study is similar to other reports where, in essence, students will say, this question from Bellingham Technical College, were the 10% in each group saying negative towards OER? That is correct. The missing 10% is saying that traditional resources were better than OER. So this approximate breakdown of saying 50 to 60% saying it's the same, 30 to 40% saying it's better, 10% saying it's worse, it's true across multiple perception studies. So there are minorities in multiple studies that are saying, the traditional books were better, but the vast majority are saying that the OER were as good or better. Now I see a question from Matthew about similar issues in a high school setting. Let me jump ahead. To this study by Robinson, and again, all of these studies are linked at the Open Ed Group website. You can read all the studies in their fullness. This Robinson study was one of the most rigorous studies that's been done in efficacy. Let me explain a little bit about what they did. It used an end of the year state standardized test as the metric. And there were the students, some students used OER textbooks in their high school science classes, so chemistry, biology, etc. And what they did was they measured the end of year state exam score, comparing those in the open versus traditional conditions. They used what was called propensity score matching to control for a wide variety of variables. So they matched up 1,274 students who were being instructed with open text and matched those with people in the control group based on gender, teacher effects, socioeconomic status, a whole host of other factors. And in examining the results of the end-of-year state standardized test, there were small but statistically significant differences between the two groups, favoring those who utilized OER. So this is the only study that I am aware of that's been done specifically with high school implementation of OER. But again, we saw the same trend. And I've skipped over several studies, but we'll see a summary slide in a second that's going to give us the same trend. This is a very interesting, rigorous perception study that was just recently done. This is the only study that I'm aware of that found a larger minority saying traditional resources are superior. Let's take a look. 61% of respondents said that OER materials had about the same trusted quality as traditional resources. So that's what we've seen before. 26% said traditional resources were superior, and 12% said that OER were superior. And those numbers are slightly reversed when 68% say the proven efficacy were about the same, 16% said OER had superior efficacy, and 15% said that traditional resources had superior efficacy. So Robin asked a great question. What's the best general definition of efficacy to use when talking about these studies? There's lots of different metrics. One of the best metrics that I think that's the cleanest is if you adopt OER resources and don't change your final exam. So if you can use the same final exam in year 2014, adopt OER in 2015, use the exact same final exam, and that gives you a really strong measure of student learning. Another measure that's been used is the percentages of students who are passing with a C or better. Another measure that's been used is the withdrawal rates for courses. So here's the synthesis. This kind of summarizes all of the research. So there's been about 3,000 students and faculty members whose perceptions were surveyed across these 7 studies pertaining to perceptions. And there's never been an instance where the majority of students or teachers reported that OER were of inferior quality. So a general finding seems to be about half think OER is comparable. There's a sizable minority that believe OER are superior, and a smaller minority that find them to be inferior. In terms of the efficacy, these different studies show about 7,000 students who have utilized OER materials, and there's never been any case where researchers claimed, look, OER was definitely the cause of this increased improvement in learning. However, the use of OER has sometimes been correlated with their test scores, lower failure rates, and lower withdrawal rates. And in none of the 8 studies have we seen anything where student learning measured by those metrics decreased or was lower than peers who use traditional textbooks. So my hope is that if you're aware of a study that I haven't listed, that you'll please share it. And I especially hope that you will find ways to initiate your own research studies. I'm more than happy to talk or explain further in terms of how you could do that, how you could do a survey. We actually at the Open Education Group have created a survey that you're welcome to freely adapt or use or modify however you'd like to share with your students. And I believe that there's many venues. I'm just listing a few here. All of these are places where you could publish an article where you talk about what happened with adoption of OER research in your context. What's happened as you've adopted OER? What differences have you seen in learning outcomes? What differences have you seen in terms of student perceptions? How do they feel about using OER? So that's about the end of my presentation. I welcome, I know we just have a couple minutes left for any questions or comments.
Great. Thank you so much, John. There were a few questions that came up along the way, and if we missed your question, you can repeat that. But before we get to questions, I just want to let you know about one more item here. John has some great references here. Our next webinar will be March 11th. At 10 a.m. So that's on a Wednesday again, the second Wednesday again at 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern. And it will be on the Zero Textbook Degree, sometimes called the Z degree, which is a number of colleges and four-year universities are colleges and universities are now offering degrees where the cost for the textbooks is zero because they're OER And we will have TJ Bliss, who's the OER director at the Hewlett Foundation, speaking along with some staff from Northern Virginia Community College and Tidewater College in Virginia. All right, now we're officially into question time here. So we had an interesting comment from Clint Lalonde, and Clint made a comment. He said, "How many efficacy studies do we have about commercial textbook publishers?" And I don't know the answer to that, Clint. I don't know, John or Boyan, if you have any information. But as we're providing efficacy studies around OER textbooks, it seems like it's a reasonable comment or question to make.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. In my limited studies, I have not found very many that are directly comparing one versus another, like this textbook versus that one.
Thank you, John. There was Boyan, did you have an answer? Did you have anything you wanted to mention about that? Well, I'm going to assume not then. We had a question from Matthew, I think, about metadata and OER. And Matt, there is the LRMI, the Learning Resource Metadata Initiative, which some of the OER repositories have been implementing. Merlot, for example, implements that, and a number of other repositories. John or Boyan, do you want to speak to any of the metadata analysis which allows easy searching of OER?
Yeah, that's not an area that I've put a lot of focus and research on, so I'm afraid that I'm not able to adequately address that question. My research is really more focused on, the research surrounding the use of OER in terms of its efficacy.
I know that my phone has been disconnected and this headset is not working well. But if you could send me an email with specific questions about maybe the types of research under certain OER topic, then I'll be more than happy to share some of the resources I have. It's kind of, because my phone, yeah, sorry.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Boyan. Specifically, they were asking about metadata analysis.
Yeah, I think I have some of those in my. I have some of those, and then so just please send me an email. I'll be more than happy to share.
Okay, thank you so much. That'll be really helpful. We had quite a few discussions about printing. And about printing OER at colleges, and some colleges allow printing of materials, and they have a limit per quarter or semester for students. I think it's, I'll just repeat a little bit of the discussion and let other people jump in, but I think printing of OER, it really depends on the subject and whether the teacher also advocates printing the material. If it's very interactive, the OER, then it may not make sense to print it, but sometimes for textual heavy materials, students do like to print those. And I think once again, it's a college decision. We just want to make sure that that OER doesn't become a burden to the college in terms of having students print those for free on college funds. So it has to be a thoughtful in giving students various options. Quite a few faculty who have adopted and developed OER actually use printers. They contract with printers to do paper-bound versions of textbooks as well. So lots of different options there. Thank you, Gary. Anyone else have anything on that?
I was just going to chip in. In some of the studies that we've done, we've found that it's actually significantly cheaper to do the print on demand rather than printing out pages. You can get a full textbook for relatively cheap. It's much cheaper than it would be to actually print out the pages. So that's something to consider when it's possible in your specific location.
Great. Thank you for that, John. And I've heard that as well. Gary is asking a pretty technical question, but Boyan, I might point this to you. He's asking about integration of LTI and LMS with OER resources.
I don't have a direct answer to that, but I can connect you to someone who would know the answer. That's clear, definitely in our system, especially in our SBCTC learning team. So let me know. Email me, please.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. And Gary, I would just say that when you're accessing OER online, you can put that directly into your learning management system. Most of the systems don't require a login, so students can have direct access. So you can simply put a link into those materials. In terms of LTI, it sounds like Boyang will answer questions on that. So thank you, Boyang. So any other questions we're missing here? John or Boyang, do you see anything else in the chat window that you'd like to address?
I'm not sure what Cherie is saying about quizzes.
That may be with regards to LTI, which is learning technology. It's how you interface external tools to your LMS. And thank you, John, for putting in the Lumen Learning site in there, and they obviously have some great resources to share as well.
Well, thanks so much for facilitating this. It's been just a real delight to converse and to hear different ideas and thoughts.
Yeah, I do once again want to thank all of the folks who joined us this morning, and we hope to see you again in March. And thanks to our amazing presenters, Boyang and John. They're very knowledgeable, and I appreciate the fact that they're willing to answer your questions after this webinar. So there's their contact information there on the page and in the chat window. And thanks everybody for coming. And
thank you.
See you again soon.
Thank you.